Hello, everyone. We'll begin now. Today, we have a very interesting session ahead of you. The theme for today is ESG in the shipping industry. And for that, today we have Dr. Anand Hiremath with us to discuss this very deep topic. And I think he comes from a very interesting background. And I'll get to it shortly. I'll just set some ground rules before that. I request you to be on mute unless and until you are asking a question. Even on the questions front, it would be amazing if you could keep it to the very end. If in the middle of the session you think of a question, please put it in the chat. Our team will kind of put it together at the end of it and send it to me. So we'll do a session for roughly 40 to 45 minutes. It'll be a back and forth conversation with Dr. Anand. And towards the end of it, we'll be taking your questions, right? If for whatever reason you missed asking a question or something, came to your mind a little later in the day, feel free to send us an email and we'd be happy to kind of, collate it, get his thoughts on it and respond to you maybe over 2 days, right? So without further ado, I will quickly start by the introduction. So, firstly, welcome, Dr. Anand. So everyone, Dr. Anand Hiremath is the Chief Sustainability Officer at GMS Leadership. He wears multiple hats at GMS. He is a lead coordinator at a program called SSORP, which is Sustainable Ship and Offshore Recycling Program. He's a lead auditor, and he's also a green shipping specialist with over 7 years of experience. He has authored 12 research papers on various topics. He's also an author of a book called The Green Handbook. And if that wasn't enough, he's also a course director at Lloyd's Maritime Academy. From an educational perspective, he holds a PhD in environmental engineering from IIT Bombay and a master's in technology in environmental technology from IIT Guwahati. He's also a hazmat and carbon footprint expert. In addition, he is responsible for the development and implementation of GMS Responsible Shipping Recycling Program. I'd like to welcome Anand. Hello, thank you so much for doing this on this beautiful Saturday morning.
Well, thank you, Arushi, and in fact, thank you for the nice introduction. In fact, and good to see a lot of participants who are here, coming from different background and different places, showing a lot of interest, especially in ESG sector, which is getting a lot of traction nowadays.
Yeah, I think just very interesting. Look at us nerds, nerding out on a Saturday morning on ESG. So again, yes, thank you so much, everyone. So Anand, actually, before we dive into ESG, we'd really love to understand more about what ship recycling really is and how does it fit in the entire shipping industry.
Well, to make it very clear, I am not a shipping guy. I don't come from a shipping background, but I happen to do my PhD, as you rightly said, on ship recycling, and I come with 10 plus years of experience in ship recycling. So I can speak a lot about ship recycling than shipping, to be frank. But the topic is such that it's about ESG in shipping. I have to cover an entire shipping, and so having said that, I'm a good observer of the industry and wearing multiple hats within the GMS, which is the world's largest buyer of ships. We get access to the good reports, access to the major ship owners who are what activity they are doing. Uh, we get a chance to read their weekly reports, see the industry trends, as well as go through their ESG reports. Based on that experience, I'm going to talk today. And as I rightly said, that I myself is not an ESG expert here, but I am a good observer coming because I did my master's as well in environmental engineering. So I see environmental coming from a qualification as an environmental 10 plus of years of experience in ship recycling. I see the social front as well. Being a chief sustainability officer of a world's largest buyer of ships, I see the governance part as well. So this is how I'm going to look into ESG of this shipping industry. You asked a very nice question. What is ship recycling? In fact, when I say this to my friends, I work for ship recycling. They ask me, what ship recycling? What is it? So it's basically about taking out the reusable materials from the ship. As you might know, that ship consists of more than 85% of ship steel. The ship is built of steel, and it's mainly the recovery of that steel from the ship when the ship completes its life. It also includes a lot of machineries, reusable equipments, So whatever we find on board a ship, apart from hazardous waste, each and every material is being reused, refurbished, or recycled. If I can give a short example, in last 40 years, in India alone, 8,500 ships have been recycled. And by recycling these many ships, they have recovered 67 million tons of steel. So by that 67 million tons of steel, you can easily build 9,000 Eiffel Towers. So look at the circular economy and the potential the recycling, the ship recycling has, and the way it is contributing for the sustainability of the industry. And one more question you asked nicely is like where it stands in the entire shipping. I can say that even the most experienced shipping people will not give or have much idea about ship recycling, because in past it was not even considered as a part of shipping, but in recent times ship recycling has got a lot of traction, and now I can confidently say that it is the fourth pillar of shipping, when the other three pillars are building, ship operation, ship repair, and the fourth one is ship recycling.
Yeah, that is very interesting, especially how I think how embedded circular economy seems to be in the entire sector, even for us, right? That is new information. It's a I think when we first met you, that is when even we learned properly about how this entire sector is broken up, and the little nuances and players that exist today. I think even taking a step back, right? Looking at the entire shipping industry today, I'd like to ask you that if shipping industry is sustainable at all.
Well, if we have to look at shipping first, we have to look at a larger picture when it's the entire transportation, like an entire transportation industry, including shipping, aviation, road transport. These entire mode of transportation contributes to nearly 16% of the total GHG emissions in the world. So out of that 16%, shipping contributes to 2.5%. So if you look at these figures, it's quite evident that shipping is the most sustainable way of transporting goods. And that's why more than 97% of the materials, even the materials which we have in and around our home, made in China, made in India, made in England, made in Turkey, though these things sounds good when we see in our home, but these things, goods have been transported across one continent to another continent, and that was possible because of shipping. And that's why more than 95% of the material which we see in and around us, this everything is transported through shipping, because a lot of bulk transportation is possible through shipping with less quantity of emissions. And in a nutshell, shipping is the most sustainable way of transport we have as on today.
Yeah, that does make sense. Now, in this context, what role does ESG, which is environment, social, and governance, play for the sector?
Well, being coming from a ship recycling background, I can give a bit glance about view about the ship recycling first. Um, Especially for ship recycling, you see, um, as on today we have 97 ship recycling yards in along India, which are compliant with the Hong Kong Convention standards. Um, Whereas 7 years back, we were having just 3 or 4 yards which were compliant with these standards. So from 4 yards to 97 yards itself is a huge increment in the sustainable recycling angles. Having said that, for the ship recycling sector, ESG is very new to this field. Why it will become important for ship recycling sector or for the shipping is there is something called as a Poseidon Principle. This Poseidon Principle is nothing but a global platform. It's a global framework for responsible ship finance. If you go for new building or finance for the ship for shipping related activities, there is a consortium of 32 banks, 32 plus banks, in fact, which have made this global framework for funding in a responsible manner. If somebody wants to fund you for your activities and want to analyze that whether you are doing your business in an environmental, social, governance compliance, so there should be a standard, there should be a criteria, and there should be a ranking. So that's where ESG fits in. So ESG will give a clear quantitative rating to your company, which will be can be utilized and when you approach your financiers or to your stakeholders, and to show how sustainable you are and how your businesses are impacting to the society.
I have so many follow-up questions from that. One thing that you mentioned here was the HKC. Could you double click on that and tell us a little bit more about what that is?
Well, HKC stands for Hong Kong Convention. This convention is basically for the safe and environment friendly recycling of ships, which we started in the year 2009. It was adopted in the year 2009, but it is not yet ratified globally. This is the convention from the International Maritime Organization, which we called as IMO in shipping. Uh, so Hong Kong Convention stands for Safe and Environment Friendly Ship Recycling. And when I said 97 yards are compliant with HKC, it means that these 97 yards have been certified, provided a statement of compliance by different classification societies that they are in compliance with the HKC standards.
Okay, very, very interesting. So I think there is a lot of activity happening in this industry, right? It could be in alignment with ESG or without that. From your perspective, over the last 5 years, what are some key trends that you have experienced, or how you have seen the industry change or shift in a particular direction?
Well, I can answer that in two ways. One is about the shipping, from the news we read, from the interactions we have with industry leaders. Um, Recently, there is a news coming up saying that there is a 40% increase in the new building orders looking for alternative fuels for their new building, whereas a few years back it was just 4 to 14%. So the 40% is a tremendous growth looking for alternative fuels for new building of ships. So that is a new change which has taken place, especially when it comes to regulations. In last 5 years, in shipping, we have seen ballast water exchange, low sulfur fuel use, and now in next month we have something called as EEXI and CII, which stands for carbon intensity indicator, as well as an energy efficiency of existing ships index. So this is all about per ship what is the emission, and as well as what is the efficiency of your engines, and there is a criteria which is going to be set by IMO. The reason for this is IMO has come up with a strategy in line with the Paris Agreement, whereas IMO would like to has committed. It's not it would like to has committed to reduce the emissions, carbon intensity of the ships by 40% by the year 2030, compared to the 2008 emission levels. At the same
Hmm.
time, by the year 2050, they want to reduce the entire annual GHG emission of shipping by 50%. So the huge target is set by IMO for decarbonization of shipping. Now you might ask that why they have set this decarbonization strategy when you claim that shipping is already sustainable, right? So the thing is, like, if you uncheck the things, if you don't check the emissions, as per the IMO's data, it is expected that by the year 2050 there will be 130% increase in the emission of shipping. So the strategy is to become more sustainable, and sustainability is a continuous, and it's a continual process.
Those are really big numbers. And another thing that I want to, take a step outside is that you talked a lot about the environment aspect of things. Are there any social aligned initiatives or requirements by HKC or IMO or any other governing body?
Well, the HKC, the Hong Kong Convention, is does not only specify about ship recycling. It starts with shipbuilding. It also covers the ship operation and ship repair, and it also covers the ship recycling. We talk about ship recycling application in application of HKC in ship recycling, it talks about safe and environment friendly ship recycling. It's about the infrastructure one ship recycling yard must have, the standard operating procedures it must have, the way it train its workers, the emergency preparedness and response plan, the entire facility to ensure zero leakage in the intertidal zone. This is what largely is covered in HKC. There is no specific mention, diving deep into the social aspects of it. Why it is because being an international convention, it applies once it is ratified, it applies globally, right? So every country has its own social commitments, social regulations. So it respects that, and HKC has is very clearly mentioned that it has all the national and local regulations has to be met first for a ship recycling yard. So in summary, it is not talking or guiding anything on the social aspects of the workers or the surrounding people, but it is respecting the local and national regulations, and it clearly mentions in its guidelines that ship recycling yard has to comply with the standards of local or national guidelines. It might be an factories act, industries act, or whatever a country's act on the labor standards.
That is quite intensive. And putting all of this together, when you look at ESG, what do you think are the key challenges when it comes to ESG implementation in the industry today?
Well, when we talk about industry, I'll say talk about the shipping here, because I say ship recycling sector, ship recycling for a shipping industry, ship recycling comes in the downstream side, right? When the ship owner sells a vessel to a ship recycling yard, the recycling yard becomes a downstream person uh, to the vendor to do that job. Um, so for the shipping, what I feel and what I read, what I understand as on today, the biggest challenge that we have is the data. The people do not have data, or people do not understand how to collect the data very related to ESG. And apart from that, if one is collecting data, they don't know how to interpret that data. Data analysis is the biggest challenge. Apart from that, you can look at there is a very less availability of data in the public domain. If you go for any ranking, as on today for shipping industry, the availability of data on the social media or in the Google or whichever platform is very limited. So the the body which you select for rating of your ESG might not get enough data available in the public domain. So these are the major challenges we have. Apart from that, if you look at on a philosophical angle, commitment to do things in the right way is also kind of missing. Awareness is also a challenge people don't have, and most of the time it's no wait and watch principle. And these I think these are the major challenges we have as on today in shipping.
Interestingly, all the challenges that you stated, to us, it sounds like these are relevant across all industries.
Yeah.
Today, we work with the pharma sector, chemical sector, the FMCG sector, and a bunch of other companies. And as they kind of embark on their BRSR reporting journey or their GRI reporting journey, a lot of core data is missing. Right. So I think the first step that even we have to do is go hunting for that data, create those data pipelines so that we can create a process around it. So yeah, it's not only shipping. I think it's just like a problem across.
Yeah.
As a counter argument, right? What are some key opportunities that you see that ESG kind of brings to the table for the shipping industry?
Well, first I'll start with ship recycling. To the ship recycling, I feel in future, because the ship owner will become ESG compliant. He will have his ESG for procedures, policies, ranking in place. He has to recycle his ship in a responsible manner, and he will always look for a recycling yard which is ESG compliant. Because the best thing about ESG is it's not about you doing everything right, but you are also expecting your upstream and downstream vendors to do the things in the right manner. So I feel where the advantage lies for the ship recycling industries to quickly adopt to the ESG standards and to practice those standards, which will certainly bring them a good business in future. This is for the um, ship recycling sector, and also it is good for the workers and environment, and for the good for the society as well. When it comes to shipping, I see a lot of opportunity. Why? Is because when I mentioned about Poseidon Principle, the 32 plus banks, they themselves have a portfolio of about $185 billion. So this portfolio is about 50% of the entire ship finance in the world. So when the finance sector is driving the sustainability, it's like you have to be in the business if you are sustainable, right? So it starts from the top, where your financiers and the investors and the banks are looking and expecting you to do a sustainable activity. So I think ESG has a great opportunity for the shipping sector, mainly the new regulations coming in, EXI and CII, and as well as the increasing awareness among the stakeholders, and as well as in the public, that public will also expect a company, or for example, if we can look at another way, I'm a company, I have a company where I produce my goods in India, say a pharmaceutical company example. So I have a pharmaceutical company in India, but I'm supplying my vaccines or my um, uh, medicines to different part of the world. But I'm making everything sustainable. I claim myself as an ESG compliant, but when I ship my goods to different part of the world, I also expect the shipping company to be an ESG compliant. That's where the role is. And since 95% of the goods in the world are transported using the shipping mode, so it becomes quite evident and quite important for the shipping to be ESG compliant. So there is a huge opportunity, not only for the business, also for the for an opportunity to create an impact, you know, to help the environment to be a sustainable and be a role model in the industry.
Yeah, I think there were a couple of things that you mentioned as response in this response and in the previous one, right? That there seem to be a lot of ESG related regulations or reporting standards out there. Could you just briefly explain a couple of these, which are the most important ones that we should all keep in mind and maybe learn more about?
Well, as I said, I'm not an ESG expert, but going through and reading through and experiencing myself as a chief sustainability officer, and as well as reading a lot of reports published by the shipping companies nowadays on ESG. Um, if first we'll just list out what are those things first. In general, what we hear and what we see is a GRI standard, Global Reporting Initiative. We talk about SASB, Sustainability Accounting Standard Board, SASB standards. We talk about task force on climate related financial disclosures, which is called TCFD. We also talk about integrated reporting, IR. These are the a few reporting standards which we see in shipping industry. um, but what I understand by your question is like, what I think the audience would like to hear here is like, what is the best standard for them if they are a shipping industry, what is the best standard for them to present it or publish the ESG rating or ESG
Yeah.
practices. um, when we see a Poseidon principle, the Poseidon principle clearly supports the TCFD, task force TFCD, task force on climate related disclosures. So it again depends on what your investors are looking at. If your investors are looking at the reporting standard as per TFCD, TCFD standards, you can definitely do that. Even we have seen kind of study conducted by Deloitte, where they have done a sample analysis of 32 shipping companies. It is also seen that it's quite relevant that SASB standard is also being used quite frequently by the shipping companies, as well as SDGs have been used. Sustainable Development Goals standard is also being used. So we have different standards in place. What I understand is, first we need to have a clarity on our ESG work, and the reporting is the next step. We should not be doing the work keeping the report in mind. So it's always, because otherwise it's like, you're trying to fit into the report and trying to be best by just understanding what one expecting in the report, other than actually doing the work. It becomes just a lip service. So I believe that we have different standards, but and again it all depends on investors, on which standards they would like to see and compare your ESG.
I agree 100%, right? That ESG just has to be a very proactive approach rather than a reactive approach, right? You can't just, it's not something you can do in 3 months and then expect to have a result, right? It has to be embedded within the core culture of the company, has to be part of like the business decisions, and then the data has to be collected and reported at the end of it. So, if with your permission, with this, I'll just take a small pause. I would like to open the floor up for any questions. And so if anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself, ask the question directly, or if not, you can put it in the chat, and I'll be happy to take it forward.
Thanks, Anand. Just a quick one. You said 95% of the global goods are are being transported by using shipping means. Is it correct what you said, if I've heard well? And what is your forecast that it will continue to drive this, the shipping industry will drive this transportation of 95%, or it going to reduce?
Of course, traditionally shipping has been used because it's the most sustainable way. You cannot transport a huge amount of goods from one continent to one nation to another nation easily by the way we do it in shipping. You heard me correctly. It's more than 95% of the goods as on today are being transported using the mode of shipping all over the world, and it's going to continue. And that's why I said by the year 2050, as per IMO, it is expected that the emissions from shipping is going to be 130% more compared to as on today we are contributing about 2.5% of the annual GHG emissions from the shipping. It's going to increase by 130% if it is unchecked by the year 2050. It clearly shows that shipping is the lifeline, and it is going to be the lifeline.
Thank you very much, Anand. Makes sense.
We have another question in the chat by Rudolph de Souza. And the question is, could you kindly explain the Poseidon principle? And in the meanwhile, our team can also pull up some quick articles to kind of share in the chat. But Anand, just could you explain what the Poseidon principles are just once again?
Well, Poseidon Principle is a name given to the global platform, which is created by 32 banks for the responsible ship finance. So it also includes that a ship resides. If you are part of a Poseidon principle, Poseidon group, then even the ship which is the ship is financed from a particular bank which is part of the Poseidon group. It even asks the end buyers to do the responsible recycling of that ship. So it covers right from building, its operation, management, repair, as well as the recycling aspects. The Poseidon principle is in line with the IMO's decarbonization strategy. That is, for the year 2050, the IMO would like to has committed to reduce the overall annual GHG emissions of shipping by 50% compared to 2008 levels. Poseidon principle is a kind of a catalyst because it's a driving force. It is a decision making force because it comes from the top, from the investor sides, and it want their members, the 32 plus banks, to invest in a responsible way and give funding for those projects which are doing a sustainable activity in shipping. Plus, as I said, it is bringing about $185 billion portfolio, 32 plus banks together, which is 50% of the ship finance. The entire details are available if you just type Poseidon Principles. There is a complete website giving complete details about either it is ship finance or decarbonization, what activities Poseidon under Poseidon Principles people are doing.
Good afternoon, Dr. Anand. Amin from Bangladesh.
Yeah.
Okay. I have just one clarification required. Considering this HKC and ESG, if we sit them beside, then as you described, that environmental and social part, that is somehow described or explained in the HKC. But what do you think about this governance part? Is there any lackings in HKC that it is not properly defined or identified in this convention?
No, what happens? Thanks for the question. In fact, it's a very valid question. When it comes to governance, that's what the governance will start when the HKC is ratified, right? So this is a global standard. This is an international convention, the Hong Kong Convention. But when it is globally ratified, every country has its own way of implementing it. The guidelines are very quite clear. But if I can give an example about governance within HKC, it gives a tacit and explicit approvals. For example, if you prepare a ship recycling plan, the government or the authorized body can give you an explicit approval, or it might also give you an tacit approval. So these arrangements are possible within this HKC guidelines, and again, it becomes depends on nation to nation. That's why if you look at India specifically, in India, when HKC is already, India has already acceded to HKC in the year 2019, and now we have a national committee formed to implement that HKC in a national level. So within the national level in India, there will be DG Shipping who will be heading this, and under them Gujarat Maritime Board will come, Gujarat Pollution Control Board will come. They will have their own, because which permission we should get from which authority, it will be decided by the national government. So this governance part will specifically start when HKC will be globally ratified. Hope I answered your question.
Thank you.
That was
Hello.
extremely thorough. Oh, I'm so sorry, Rajan. Yes, go for it.
Sorry, Dr. Anand, thanks for your time. I have a couple of questions, and then these are more from the port developers' perspective, and not essentially from the shipping sector. Now, as you're aware, as far as the port sector is concerned, there are certain targets considering the Maritime India Vision 2030 in terms of carbon reductions and in terms of use of alternative fuels for the shipping sector, making the ports more green in a sense. While there have been a lot of discussions in terms of using alternative fuels for shipping, in terms of, let's say, ammonia, LNG, or any other use of other kinds of fuel, the port infrastructure, including, let's say, providing shore power, has not yet kept pace with what the shipping industry is currently looking at. Now, somewhere down the line, without having such kind of shore infrastructure to support such kind of changes to the alternative fuels, the reduction in carbon emissions, or let's say meeting the target, seems to be fairly difficult, because you would want to have locations or spots where you can go take in let's say LNG or shore power for day-to-day operations. Now, is there a strong disconnect between the way the shipping industry has taken to decarbonization as against the port infrastructure sector, the developers?
Well,
Sorry, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thanks for the nice question. In fact, it's a new angle to it. The entire decarbonization. It's not just about it's a ship operation. It's also about the infrastructure in and around which the shipping industry depends on. And I really like this idea about that. But somewhere something has to start, right? So when we argue about why CII or EEXI has to come up next month, because somewhere something has to start, and it's a time where action needs to be taken. And I totally agree that it has to be an integrated approach. There is a like yesterday I was speaking with one of the big ship owner, and he was telling me now with the EXI and CII coming into picture, there is a challenge of slow steaming. The slow steaming can be done and you save a lot of fuel and emissions. But what happens when you wait in your port to get the berth? So that if you cannot reduce that waiting period, again you are going to burn more fuel in your by waiting at the port. So even the port has to play a great role in managing the ships, the time they are going to allow. There has to be a lot of digitalization which has to come in. There has to be a lot of activities which shipping companies, government, and the port needs to work and sort out for giving a complete meaning for this ESG and decarbonization. I totally agree with you. There is an the requirement for the infrastructure, as the ships which with alternative fuels are going to increase in coming days. There certainly is requirement for the, especially for the onshore power, or it might be of any other type of arrangements for those new ships. And the port has a great role to play even in the decarbonization.
Thank you, sir. That I think kind of re-emphasizes the practical realities, or let's say the issues that are currently being faced. And what we are seeing is that while let's say the Jain Port or Mumbai Port Trust, and which will be followed up by some of the other major ports here, what we're increasingly seeing is that while there is this intention to move towards decarbonization, move towards alternative fuels, we feel that there is a disconnect between the shipping industry and the port sector, because one is interdependent, but currently the thought processes are being done in silos. And we do feel that the integration, or let's say discussions at a common point, will be absolutely essential in kind of making it a truly environmental solution, rather than what you mentioned earlier, meeting the reporting requirements rather than bringing in the required solutions. So that was my one question.
Exactly.
I'll just take another minute here. Just to go ahead with what one gentleman, Mr. Amin, mentioned. We also foresee that, or rather, we also see that if I look at different standards of reporting between GRI, TCFD, and so on and so forth, while, let's say, I'm just giving an example, while the GRI seems to be more towards the environment and less in terms of, let's say, social and governance, there are other standards which are more pro towards, let's say, the governance perspective, but then they lack a few things as far as, let's say, the environmental matters are concerned. Now that kind of puts us into a questionable position as to, do we follow a perspective, or let's say a sort of a reporting, or do we have the flexibility to pick and choose against each parameter or each materiality assessment that we do against each material topics? Do we pick and choose a particular standard basis which the reporting can be done? Is it something that's possible to be done?
That's absolutely possible, and that's what I say, because when we see that GRI standard is only talking about environment, not touching about governance, it's all about our viewpoint as well. Even when we implement ESG, we select a materiality topic in a such a way that we feel that this is the best I'm doing, and this is the impact we have. But the right way of doing an ESG is to understand the stakeholder requirements, bring in the stakeholders, understand what impact our activity is going to have on environment, social, and governance part, and equally work on ESG parts. It's not just about environment. Then, while even you are reporting, if it is a GRI or TCFD, because based on your materiality topic only, your impact is going to be decided. So I think Arushi can add more to it, because she herself is a co-founder of Oren, and they come across these challenges on day-to-day basis. In my personal experience, when I am practicing trying to collect data for ESG, I literally see in certain angles, especially in environment, we are doing better. In social, we are a bit lagging, or in governance, we have to start something new. Um, what I say that first we have to have a clear understanding from a good consultant, or from the stakeholders meeting, and real impact of our actions, not only uh, from the services we are giving. It's also about the employees which we they are in our companies, what they are facing, and what standards and procedures we have to have within our system, as well as what we have to expect from our upstream and downstream vendors.
Perfect.
Arushi can explain it
Yeah.
better, I guess. Please, Arushi.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much. Adding to that, Rajan, so so if you look around you today, right, lots of companies out there in the world are doing their ESG data management and reporting for the first time ever, right? In India as well. We work with a lot of customers in India, and like starting this year is when a regulation has been levied on them by SEBI called BRSR, and they have to have a report out at the end of the financial year. So regulators are one set of drivers for ESG reporting. Another set of drivers are investors or maybe your customers, right? So the approach that companies tend to take is that think about who their prime audience is for this ESG data. And I'd say over time, you have to be real to yourself that almost all your stakeholders would want to look at your ESG data. ESG data will become as important as your financial data. But when you have like a starting point, and you want to set like certain smaller goalposts to reach, smaller milestones to reach the big goal, the way to start is to look at who your audience is for this, and accordingly kind of start with your reporting process. Right. See, and something I think you mentioned is that an ESG report is just an ESG report card, like a thing, like how we got report cards in school, wherein you kind of try to improve your data year on year. And at the end of the year is when you just have this report card out to whoever's reading it, that hey, last year this is what my GHG numbers were, and this is what they are now. And yes, I have improved because of this reason. I could not improve because of this reason. Maybe I've added a new factory, I've added a new business or something like that. right? And that's why I think Dr. Anand was kind of alluring to this as well, that it's a long-term journey. Right? You can't think of it as like a one year activity. You have to think of it like a 10-year activity, and then over time, it's just business as usual, right? It's not like separate, like how you won't think about your finance or marketing as like a very different something very different from business. It's just so much part of a business. ESG will soon become like that.
True. No, I think fairly. Thanks both of you. I think largely the issues that we faced earlier were quite similar to what you've just mentioned, and the BRSR also. I think, and if and please correct me if I'm wrong. Currently, it seems to be applicable only to the top 1,000 listed companies in
Correct.
the indices. And also the way we look at it is ESG seems to be voluntary in nature as of now, but eventually I would understand that this would something become compulsory in a sense from a regulatory aspects as well. So I think from that perspective, being prepared, I think having a vision of, let's say, over a horizon of, let's say, 5 to 10 years, possibly makes a little bit more sense in going through the journey of ESG. Ultimate goal being getting investments through ESG funds and so on and so forth, from that perspective as well. Great. So thanks both of you. I think you've answered most of my questions, and thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, Rajan, there's one more follow-up, comment that I had on what you were just saying, that yesterday, while BRSR is relevant to the top 1,000 listed companies only, there are so many, like we were talking about it, there are so many other reporting standards. So there's another set of customers that we work with, which are investors, right? So today, even some certain private equity investors are looking at, are kind of expecting their investee companies, their portfolio companies, to submit some amount of ESG data to them. So that's another stakeholder. Interestingly, if you're today, if you're a smaller company supplying to, large organizations like, say, Apple, Microsoft, Google, Target, H&M, even you have to, even though you're a small SME, even you have to have certain ESG reports out, to continue being a supplier with them. So there are just lots of different stakeholders who are now showing interest in this, and the purpose of all of these organizations is to create a culture amongst these organizations and the suppliers that they deal with, because their numbers will eventually kind of get pulled into the numbers of the Microsoft suppliers will eventually get pulled into Microsoft's own sustainability report. So that's why they've already started doing work around that.
Perfect. They're very helpful. Very helpful there, Prachi. I'm sorry. Very helpful there. Thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Hello, good evening, sir. Mustafa this side. Sir, my question was more towards the social and governance aspect, sir. So, I am an MBA in Energy and Environment student, and whenever my sir discusses regarding the shipping industry, he speaks about the safety failure in Titanic, sir. So, I wanted to know, like, is ISO 45001 still valid, and can it be used as a framework, or should we go with the set frameworks, TCFT, GRI, when we are focusing the stakeholders, that is employees working in the ship, sir, during its operations?
Well, thanks for the interesting questions. Thanks for the interesting question. I know when the shipping you talk about, there's always an health, safety, and environment comes into a picture. There are two things here which you have mentioned. Like ISO 45,000 is earlier it was ISO 18,000. Now it has been upgraded to ISO 45,000, where it makes mandatory for the participation of the workers in your major decisions. It might be in your policies. It might be in your work. It might be in the toolbox talk, or it might be in any operational changes. The participation of workers has been made mandatory, and ISO 45,000 is valid. But when it comes to reporting of ESG, there are different standards which Arushi has mentioned. You have can take TCFD, you can take SASB. Reporting is the last part. So don't focus on the reporting first. Focus on what exactly the ESG component of a particular work activity you're trying to do. So the example of safety failures in Titanic is one issue, but there might be another issues as well, that there was no proper planning. Governance part was not there, right, at that time. So there's a governance part was there. There is some committee sitting on Titanic in the and they are telling them and channeling them, telling them from, there is an iceberg there. So in the night it's coming up. So these are the four sides, these four sides ESG provides. This governance people see that now ESG is a journey which Arushi has mentioned. This journey is for a period of 10 years, and you are trying to see and set your goals. So within that, there is something called a science-based target. So once you set your target based on science-based target, I say I want to achieve my emissions. Emissions is just one part, because the entire globe is talking about decarbonization. We think that only GHG emission reduction is becoming, only one target. GHG emission reduction karo, then you will become an ESG compliant. It's not like that. It's totally not like that, and most 99% of the people understand ESG only as a GHG emission reduction. It's a misconception. Even as a company, if you're not using plastic, even as an individual part of a company, you save water even in your home, because there are a lot of um, activities which we do on our day-to-day life, which has a lot of impact on the environment. Maybe saving, not doing any food wastage, that itself is a huge carbon reduction saving. Why I'm saying saving water is like, whenever you use water, that water has to be pumped from the groundwater or from the tanks. It has to be pumped. There is an electricity consumption involved to it. So when you use over water, or when you uh, see some leakage of water, that is the leakage of not only just water, it's also an energy associated with it. So you have to see a life cycle assessment perspective. Don't see just as an ISO 45,000 or something. Treat it as a life cycle assessment perspective. Not just look it as an decarbonization, look it as an eutrophication, look it as an acid rain, look it as an ecological impact, look it on a biodiversity impact. So when you wear these multiple specs and try to understand the energy associated by utilization of all these activities, then we can, I say, there is a true meaning and implementation of ESG will be. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, sir. So, sir, you are saying that I should look it from cradle to grave perspective, the life cycle
Exactly,
assessment, which you
exactly,
said. So this,
exactly. From building of Titanic to the from building of Titanic till it's completely sank in the ocean, and after sank, these many years, what happened to that ocean also have to cover in a nutshell.
okay, sir. So, sir, this I should
Okay.
be implementing for the entire shipping industry. So, you're saying that for the entire supply chain, I have to consider the ESG framework at each unit. I have to be applying it.
See, that's what happens is, like, first it all depends on a scope. I would like to give more time to you, because when we say I want to apply this to an entire supply chain, the supply chain word looks very small, but there's a huge thing. For example, today, we are using our laptop or mobile. I say I want to use that life cycle assessment just for my laptop. The laptop consists of another 3,000, 4,000 parts in it, and every part you need to do an LCA, right? So that is very challenging, and it's not easy, because we don't have an emission factors for most of the things which we talk about today. So it's like you have to select just one component of a shipping, maybe a ship or the logistic chain, and you have to do an cradle to grave of that one particular part. It may be a nut bolt, or it may be a winch, or it may be a wire rope, it might be an engine section, it might be a DG generator. You just have to take one section of that and do a complete life cycle assessment. But don't generalize that scope, because in that one there will be more than 5,000 assumptions when we do such studies.
Yes, sir. Thank
Yeah.
you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I have another questions. Whenever we are talking about this ESG reporting, then another word, the greenwashing,
Yeah.
that comes forward.
Yeah.
So in that case, most of the time, this ESG report is being prepared by the in organization itself. Okay. Then is there
Right.
any requirements to get this report verified or certified by any third party like certification body or others?
Yeah, there are certification bodies. They are not certification bodies; they are ranking bodies. So, for example, there is something called as Sustainalytics, MSCI, S&P Global, Refinitiv. There are many. There are, I think, 10 to 12 agencies which do the rating for your ESG. But again, that rating is not just dependent on what report you have submitted. It all depends on what image you have and what impact you totally have on the society or from your work activities. If you submit your ESG report, it's not like they will just go through your ESG report and then they will rate you. It's not just like an ship recycling facility plan where an classification society comes and evaluate your ship recycling facility plan and issue a certificate. It's about what people think about your company in the in the social media, or maybe in uh, in the society, what impact or what people think about your company. They will also go through the previous history of the company in the last 10 years, what activities has been done. They will do a proper assessment of what are the positive news about your company and what are the negative news about your company, and then they will make out, study your materiality topics, what you have covered, what and takes place. Yes, there is a rating system. Answer is yes, but rating system is not just dependent on the reporting standard which you use. It depends on the entire impact over a period of time your company has created to the social, environmental, and governance part. Hope I answered your
Thank
question.
you. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
There's another question in the chat, which is by Sriraj. Could you share how will SRY, which I'm guessing is ship recycling yards, start working on ESG when some are not even 50% HKC compliant? How can the government drive this change?
Well, as we have traditionally seen, um, government and governance part is quite tricky. We can have regulations, but what it depends is about its implementation. You can have thousands of rules and regulations, but if you're not strict in implementing it and you don't have an implementation procedures, then where the gaps comes in. So I think voluntarily the industry has achieved HKC compliance as on today, and the government's job is to provide a lot of infrastructure which is required for the smooth operation. Um, in that way, government can bring in regulations as well as an implementation plan where there is a huge role the government can play. Apart from this, much of this relies, I think 70% of the work relies with the ship recycling yards to be an ESG compliant. What I mean to say ESG compliant is they might already be doing the activities which are kind of required or must do kind of things, but they will not be recording it in a proper way. You might have heard in the last Mr. Alamin from Bangladesh was saying that a lot of greenwashing is being done on the front of reporting or something. I think the people have the world has now really understands and see this clear difference. The technology is the news, everything reaches very fast in this today's world. It's not easy to do any kind of greenwashing, which I believe. Second is it's not only just greenwashing. It comes when it comes to shipping. I was reading some article where it was mentioned, the greenwashing, blue washing, and pink washing has come up. The blue washing is about you become a member of some organization. For example, you become United Nations Global Compact organizations member. You register for it, you become an UNGC member, and you do a blue washing. You don't take any actions because UNGC is voluntary, and they expect you to voluntarily follow the 10 principles or the principles which you choose. And now you claim in yourself in your marketing materials that I am a UNGC compliant or UNGC member, but just becomes a lip service. Actually, you are not taking any actions, you are not doing any things. So not only the greenwashing, the blue washing name has also come up nowadays. Apart from that, there is something called as pink washing I read, where people talk about LGBT support, but just for the namesake, but there are no procedures and systems in place within the organization to support LGBT. So not only greenwashing, pink washing, and blue washing, something has also come up. But that's what I say. Don't look at the standard which you want to use or publish. Do your homework properly. Do your compliance uh, with 100% will. If you do that, then reporting is just a mode of presenting your data. Your data has to be authentic. Your data has to be evidence based, and your data has to be transparent. This is the main requirement for ESG.
Yeah, on the data front, I think some companies are also one is that they are collecting and collating it themselves. and some organizations are also looking at, third party assurance organizations to step in and to make sure that, okay, if I'm reporting on something being X kgs or X tons, now that it really is that, and just do that entire check, comparing it with the data that they have. So yeah, I think just please be very mindful of the data being correct at all times. There's another question, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure in what context this is, but maybe you might have an answer. Is there impact of the carbon border adjustments on the shipping industry? This is a question by Kisan.
Sorry, can you please repeat the question?
Yeah, the question is that what is the impact of carbon border adjustments on the shipping industry?
Well, I don't think I have a clear answer for this.
Hmm.
Well, also have to check it actually. So my understanding about this is very limited. Sorry for that. But we might come back to you if you can share your email ID. We'll love to come give a detailed answer after understanding this properly.
Yeah, 100%. We'll kind of all think about it and get back to you with this response. So we have just 4 minutes left. Does anyone have any closing thoughts, any closing questions? This is very interesting. We spent like 30 minutes talking and 30 minutes on questions. So this is like a great set of audience that we have today. Yes, this is being recorded, and we will be emailing you the recording in maybe a day's time. Awesome. So I think if there are no questions, I'd like to close this webinar. Thank you so much, Dr. Anand. This was amazing. We all learned a lot today. And thank you so much, all the participants. Your questions were absolutely, they were really intelligent questions and very, it just so context based, right? I think all of us learned each other because shipping is huge, right? You have like ports sitting somewhere, you have the ship breaking yards sitting somewhere, then you have shipping in the middle. So, putting all of that together was a great experience. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Arushi.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.